Hello everyone. So I think there's still a few people joining, but we'll get started because we've got a full jam-packed agenda for you today. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining us to celebrate Autism Awareness Day 2025. I'm Brooke, I'm the Partnership Lead for UOK Brighton and Hove. Also, if you could stay muted, that'd be amazing. Thank you. So I'm Brooke, I'm the Partnership Lead for UOK Brighton and Hove, and I'm supported today by my wonderful colleagues Mansi and Zoya. So UOK is a partnership of 20 mental health support services across Brighton and Hove and East Sussex, and it's led by Southdown. And you can find out more by visiting our website, which my colleague will put in the chat. So I wanted to organise today because of a personal connection I have with autism, as my sister has recently been diagnosed with both autism and ADHD, and it's really helped her to understand herself better and get some vital support. And her experiences have helped me to understand autistic people in a way I perhaps didn't before. So if we could share the presentation. Yeah. Perfect. Can everyone see that okay? Perfect. So first off, just do a bit of housekeeping to start us off. As I said, we are recording, so if you'd rather not be featured, please feel free to turn off your cameras, although we would really like to see your faces, and especially during the Q&A sections. Please stay muted unless you're asking a question, and please make sure your questions are as clear and direct as possible. And you can use the chat function throughout, and we can collect and answer the questions after the webinar. In the Q&A sections, please raise your virtual hand. If you raise your real hand, we probably won't see you. And please do move around and stretch if you need to. I always do this during webinars to keep engaged. So we have a really fantastic lineup of speakers for you, and we just want to make sure that you're fully engaged for that. And please do enjoy. So first off, I wanted to say a bit about the importance of Autism Awareness Day and why we're all here. So autism is a natural part of human diversity, and yet, as many of you know, autistic people still face barriers in society. World Autism Awareness Day is a celebration and understanding of embracing difference, acceptance, and sharing ways we can all contribute to a more inclusive and supported world for autistic people. In this webinar, we firstly want to challenge misconceptions. So there are a lot of these out there, and through the voices of our autistic speakers, we want to bust some myths and tell some truths. We also want to hear from and empower autistic voices. Although I know our speakers and autistic people do a great job of this already, it's important that platforms like this exist. And lastly, we want to encourage you all to be better allies and make the world a better place for autistic people. So now on to our speakers. Change the slide, please. So we're thrilled to be joined by 6 autistic people who will share their expertise and lived experiences today. Every person is completely different and has their own unique story to tell, which perfectly reflects the autistic community. Now, to briefly introduce our speakers, so we have Tanya. She's an autistic professional joining us through Possibility People. We have Emily, who's an expert by experience, joining us through Possibility People. We have Katie, who is the co-chair of ADHD Aware. We have Fiona, who is an employment specialist at Southdown. We have Christopher, who is our illustrated autist, who's got absolutely fantastic visual presentations for you later on today. And we have Alice, who's a peer tutor for Southdown Recovery College. And up top, I just wanted to say a really big thank you to ADHD Aware, Grassroots Suicide Prevention, Possibility People, Southdown, Mansi and Zoya, and of course our speakers for all their support. Without them, this webinar would not be going ahead, or it would just be really, really rubbish. So I'm very grateful for all of you. Thank you. And now for the agenda. Take a little glass of water. So first off, we have Tanya, who's going to give us some myths, facts and realities, and there'll be a bit of audience participation with that. Then we have Understanding Autism and Masking by Emily. Then we have the overlap between autism and ADHD, and that's with a Q&A with Katie, who's the chair of ADHD Aware. Then we'll have a short comfort break, 5 minutes, so get your tea bags and your mugs ready for that. Then we'll have a panel discussion. So this will be a lived experience panel discussion with an audience Q&A, and that'll be hosted by Fiona. And then we'll have Christopher's story. So Christopher, the illustrated autist. And then we'll be having Alice sort of host How to Be an Ally Beyond Autism Awareness Day, so that you can have something to take away with you. And we've also got some resources with a QR code at the end to share with you. So now let's hand over to Tanya, our first speaker, for myths, facts and realities.
Thank you, Brooke. Can you bring up my slide, please? Okay, so these are a couple of questions, and maybe I should introduce myself now. So my name is Tanya, spelled with a J, and I'm a specialist senior coach supporting neurodivergent people in the workplace. I mentor coaches new to neurodiversity coaching, and I also create and facilitate training on all aspects of neurodiversity, suicide prevention, missing people, and co-production. Sorry, I am in a public place and people are walking through. So if you can, there's 4 statements asking you to say whether something is true or false. Everyone is a bit autistic. Do you think that is true or false? I can't see the chat because I'm doing this from my phone.
We've got quite a few falses. We've got 1 true. Oh, another true. I'll add them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
On the whole, people are saying it's false.
On the whole, people are saying it's false.
Yeah, which is very impressive because a lot of people normally say it's true. Actually, it is false, and that is because autism is a... If you're not speaking, can you please turn off your microphone? Otherwise, I get too much feedback here. Thank you.
Sorry.
So yeah, autism is actually a medical diagnosis. There's very specific diagnostic criteria, and unless you meet each and every single criteria, actually you are not autistic. It'd be like suggesting when you've had a good night out on the town and you've gained weight as a result and you're feeling nauseous and really tired, would be suggest that you're pregnant, because those are all signs of pregnancy as well, but actually there's no relation. What is true is that most people might have autistic traits or characteristics, which makes sense. It's a natural occurring phenomenon. So therefore we would expect people to have, if you like, traits of autism, of ADHD as well. It doesn't make you autistic. Unless you meet the diagnostic criteria, you wouldn't get a diagnosis. So next one, please. Autism is a lifelong condition. Do you think that is true or false? Most people think that's true. Yeah, and that is true. It is lifelong. Somebody is born autistic and dies autistic, yet most services and most awareness is actually around children. And a lot of, there's a lot of parent carers groups, there's lots of support, but it seems that people seem to forget that, when you're 18, autism doesn't go away. It will always be with that person, and it is part of that person. And yeah, sometimes, particularly women and girls, do not get diagnosed until much later, sometimes in their 70s, because I know Emily will be talking about it. Masking is very much a big part of autism, and that can actually mean it's hard for somebody to get diagnosed. And also the original diagnostic criteria were based on boys, so that doesn't make it easier. Girls tend to present differently. So next one, please. Autistic people lack empathy. Do you think that is true or false? You're very good, aren't you? Yeah, it's absolutely false. And in fact, often the reverse is true. So autistic people may actually be hyper empathetic, which also makes them often quite vulnerable to exploitation, for instance, because they really can over empathize with other people. But what you may find is that autistic people are so good at masking, at hiding what they're thinking and how they're feeling, that it may appear. So they're trying to fit in what is acceptable, somebody who smiles. So they might, for instance, smile at inappropriate circumstances because they're actually trying to fit in, and it can backfire. So the final one, please. Autistic people can have great attention to detail and hyperfocus. Everybody thinks that is true, which is absolutely correct. Do you know who one of the biggest employers of autistic people is in the UK? IT, NHS, Armed Forces, MI5, getting close. It is actually GCHQ, so one of our intelligence agencies, who along with MI5 and MI6 is one of the biggest employers, and they really value their autistic employees. Also, they have a lot of people with ADHD who are dyslexic, who are dyspraxic, and that is because we're talking about people who can spot patterns, who can identify themes, who have great attention to detail, hyper focus, and often a really long-term great memory. So they're really amazing assets to have when you work in the field of intelligence analysis. So yeah, you are very impressive with your knowledge so far. And I will go now, and I will see you at the panel, and enjoy the day.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tanya. It's fantastic. We've learned a lot there about myths, facts and reality, so perfect. Now I'm going to introduce Emily, who's going to be talking to us about understanding autism and masking. So Emily is a trainee counsellor and expert by experience in autism, eating disorders, self-harm, suicide and trauma. She works with multiple organisations, including the NHS, Beat, Mind and King's College, and runs Motivate the Mind, delivering training projects and inspirational talks. She has co-authored 12 books. Wow, that's impressive. And is a volunteer disability sports coach and mentor with several services, communities and charities, empowering and inspiring long-lasting change. I'll say it to you, Emily. Thank you.
Just checking, can you hear me okay? Perfect, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. It did work before, so fingers crossed we work again. Can I just confirm if you can see the slides?
I can, yes.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll just go to the start. So I've got just 10 minutes. I'm going to keep an eye on my time to talk to you a little bit about masking. So I guess that's a really common thing for autism. So people, you know, when I tell people I'm autistic, they go, you can't be autistic. You talk, you engage, you do all of these wonderful things, but actually it takes a lot of time and energy and resource and skill to manage life and all of these experiences. So I think, you know, talking about masking is so important to break that stigma and to, you know, allow people to feel accepted and included. So Brooke has introduced me, so I won't really go through all that again, but that's the information there, and the slides are being shared, so you'll have that information. But a lot of my work comes from my lived experience to empower, to inspire, and to try and make a difference to people with autism and other co-occurring conditions. So when we try and understand what is autism and masking, we define it through autism.org, that it's a strategy used by some autistic people, consciously or unconsciously, you know, to help, you know, get by in life, to work and manage in social situations. And actually, you know, I do that. A lot of people I know that I work with autism do that. And whilst it helps us to cope, helps us to be in these situations, actually masking can then have an impact on all areas of our life, mentally, emotionally, physically, because we're not always seeing the bigger picture. And I guess for me, I'm really visual with my autism and my experiences of mental health, eating disorders and suicide. And when I mask, I say I'm fine. And when I had some kind of support, I had to try and describe what's behind that mask. What am I actually masking? And it's really important we think of visual images when we come to this. And for me, it was like a washing machine in my brain on its full spin cycle. Or it can be a tug of war in the head, where you're kind of being pulled in two different directions in your life, and then you're having to mask to try and keep yourself safe, to keep in control. But actually, you know, masking, you know, is a protective factor in that moment, but it loses, I'm sure you've all heard of the spoon theory, uses a lot of spoons, uses a lot of energy. And for me, it led to burnout, low self-esteem and meltdowns and exhaustion. And that actually impacted my mental health and my struggles with eating disorders and gambling, self-harm, all of these other challenges because of the masking becoming such an entrenched part of my experience with autism. And for me, it blocked out distress. It's been a way to cope and actually to try and fit in. People that are autistic and that mask, they want to fit in because they've got this label of autism. They don't know where they belong in this world, and they want to try and show that they do belong. So actually we mask to show we're fine, we're strong, we're really engaged people. And I just say to people I was fine because I didn't want people to worry about me. I wanted to feel okay in myself. And I didn't know how else to tell people that other than I'm fine. But I masked that and it kind of hid me in. And it then led to all of these struggles. And for me, I had to learn that being autistic, there's no shame in it. You know, since my diagnosis in 2017, because I got misdiagnosed when I was 12, I got my confirmed diagnosis in 2017. And actually, that saved and changed my life massively because I was isolated. I struggled with, suicidal thoughts and all of these other experiences. And I didn't know how to tell people all of this stuff. So the masking was the protective factor. But once I had the right support, and, I'm going to show you a bit of that now, masking, for me, I was able to start to take that mask off. And that's a really empowering thing and allowed me to be who I was. When we understand masking and autism, it's important that people are in the right environment because actually, I've been in really bright, noisy, chaotic environments and I got told I wasn't engaging when I've been having eating disorder treatment, mental health treatment, or any kind of therapy. I couldn't engage in a bright, overstimulated environment where there was distress, there was noise, there was all sorts of things. And actually, these things on this slide was the blank canvas, having a blank environment, my grounding techniques, asking open questions to engage and support, my levels of distress, and alternative therapies. So I use art therapy, and that's been a way to take my mask off because actually I can draw how I'm feeling, I can draw what's under that mask, and then show a picture. Or it might be that I take this little picture on the top left is Alfie the therapy dog. I see him once a week. I'm seeing him today actually after today's session. And, we go for a walk and I have a chat with the volunteer. I'm in a safe environment. I'm in the outdoors. I'm with something that's comforting me because I don't like touch, but I like holding a dog. And that takes my mask off. That allows me to reveal the real me. And some of the other things that we need to think about is how we communicate with people. I won't go into too much detail, but we will put this in the resources that Brooke's going to send out. But I work with the Peace Pathway for Autism, Mental Health and Eating Disorders. And we use this communication passport because actually with masking, we can't always verbalise how we're feeling. So we need to be able to find a way to communicate our needs. And services are starting to engage where actually communication passports allow you to write down how you like to communicate. When challenges might be for communication, you might be having a really bad day politely. You might be really overwhelmed. You might be masking to say you're fine. You might be struggling with other mental health or other experiences. And then you're expected to go and communicate in maybe a therapy session, your job, your meetings. But if you can't, you just mask and shut down. But actually, these passports allow you to write down these experiences, what you need to engage and communicate, and you can share them within services, within charities, within your employers. And that allows you to start conversations of how you want to be communicated with. And actually the scale of sensory need and communication need, if you understand where you are, that can be really empowering as well. And actually, my work with grassroots, I've worked with grassroots for over a year now, time's flying by, it's going very quickly. And actually, a lot of my masking hid suicidal thoughts, it's hid the gambling addiction, it's hid eating disorders, all of these other struggles. And the biggest thing that we created was a suicide safety plan. What do I need to keep myself safe? Because with the mask, I would say I'm fine. I could have really dark, scary thoughts. I could be in the depths of addiction, eating disorders, the gambling, whatever it was. And actually, by having a safety plan, it empowered us. It empowered me and it empowers people to keep safe, to have a support. We also look at it as a roller coaster. What's our ups? How are we thriving without masking? What do we need to thrive? What's bringing us down? What's the triggers? What's the causes? What's making us stuck in the middle, going round and round? And what's keeping us straight on the roller coaster? I mean, I hate real life roller coasters, so you won't get me on there. But actually, visualizing that journey is so important. And the spoon theory. Actually, I've realised I only have so many spoons in a day to function. Once they're gone, I am masking, I am shutting down, and I am no longer able to function. So actually understanding, how do you manage your time? Because for me, if I'm with people all day and I'm working all day and I'm helping, that's my job, I have to mask a lot to manage that. I come home, I'm burnt out and I'm exhausted, and then I'm no good to anybody. So I've had to learn how to manage my time, to manage my mental well-being, to manage my physical well-being, and to look after myself. So the spoon theory has helped me to remove that mask and be really strong. And just, I want to share, I'm aware of time, but with Grassroots, we've got the Stay Alive app. How do we keep people safe? You can download this on your phone. I'm not technical in any way, shape, or form, so you'd have to look up what phone that is. But actually sharing with somebody, because suicide is hidden by masking and autism, as well as all these other co-occurring conditions. How do we keep people safe? By downloading that app, you can do your safety plans, you can build tools, you can build skills. And actually, you can then share that with people, remove your mask in a creative and alternative way. And we've also released a podcast to share experiences of how we talk with people about neurodiversity and suicide and masking. So I was joined by another member of the panel with Grassroots. And that was a really empowering conversation. And sharing our experiences in these ways is really empowering and really, really important. And for me now, I'm my own best friend. I'm 7.5 years out of hospital after, several times my masking and my eating disorder and all these other experiences put me in hospital. I embrace who I am and I feel it to heal it. And I have all of these plans and skills, and I describe it like a butterfly being put together and facing everything and rising. So just think about, when you look at somebody with autism and they're masking, go into them, without those judgments, hold that empathy, ask them, what do you need from me? Work together to create a support plan. And I just want to finish with some quotes of, the rock bottom is often a solid foundation on which we can rebuild our lives and come back stronger. And the bravest thing that I ever did was continue to live when I wanted to die. And I'm brave and I'm bruised and I'm who I'm meant to be. And there was this final quote after I'd been in hospital after my autism diagnosis for my mental health and eating disorder. And it was, look at you, challenging that voice, healing those traumas, getting through the challenges, removing your masks, helping us to help you in a way, speaking bravely and vulnerably. Growth and change gets messy and ugly, but then the light finds its way through and that shines brightly, because when you're broken and lost on the ground, you will be found. Because a butterfly is proof you go through a great deal of darkness, yet you become something beautiful. So thank you. I know it's a really short thing today, but I hope that just think about the communication, the engagement, the environment, and the connections you make with other people. And just by being different, we succeed together. But there will be questions. If there are any questions, I can answer those with Brooke a separate time. But thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was so raw and brave of you to share all of your experiences. And it's just brilliant to hear your story, and that you're supporting so many people through your work now. It's just incredible. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Emily's also on the panel later on. So now I'm going to pass over to Katie. If we can share this PowerPoint again. Wonderful. Thank you. So Katie has been a co-chair of ADHD Aware since 2018 and a trustee of Autistica since 2021. And she also serves on finance and project committees. She was diagnosed with autism and ADHD later in life. She is passionate about neurodiversity advocacy, and outside of her charity work, she is a senior executive in the technology sector and is proud to serve as a speaker and advocate for neurodiverse people within organisations, service providers and government. I'll pass over to you, Katie. Thank you.
Cool. If we can, there we go. There's my first slide. So yes, as Brooke kindly introduced me, I am involved with ADHD Aware and have been for a number of years. We're I believe one of the largest ADHD focused charities for adults in the UK, and I'm not sure how that stands against other parts of the world, but we support about 500,000 people a year through our website, our social media, through our meetings. We run 7 different meetings every month. And that includes people both who are diagnosed as having ADHD, but also people who are the parents of children who have ADHD or partners. We've got a special couples course that supports the kind of that dynamic of the ADHD experience. So I wanted to come today and speak to you about dual diagnosis, though, because we're seeing a much higher kind of increase of people coming to us who've received a dual diagnosis in the last few years, actually, kind of especially the last 3 years roughly, we've had more and more people raising that and coming to us with that. So in the past, we've partnered with some other charities to support people that have both diagnoses. We actually used to partner with another charity in Brighton and Hove specifically called Assert, and unfortunately they're not around to be partnered with anymore, but we do try and work as much as possible with the NHS and social services and other charities. So I'll go to the next slide, please. One reason I came to talk about this today is I have the dual diagnosis. So I'm going to talk in this slide a little bit about kind of some specific aspects of my experience, and then I'll kind of go through another few elements and things to consider as far as what it's like to be somebody who has ADHD and autism. So I've separated them out here because often, historically, until recently, people have really thought about these conditions as though they are separate things. You are either ADHD or you have autism, including kind of in a clinical environment. The way that diagnosis worked, or at least my experience and a lot of people's experience up until recently, has been that you get diagnosed kind of for one thing at a time. Fortunately, that's starting to change, and there's more recognition of like what they call comorbidity. It's a terrible term, but it's a medical term for having kind of more than one condition and things that kind of co-occur with each other frequently, and that's starting to be recognized a lot more throughout the NHS. So, but to kind of break it down for you, the other reason I've done this slide in two separate parts is because sometimes these parts of my brain, especially the ADHD and the autism part, kind of compete with each other a little bit. And there are kind of forces pulling me in different directions, as I think Emily was talking about, between those conditions rather than even just inside of the autism. So some characteristics that you'll probably be familiar with if you know anyone with ADHD, that part of my brain is sometimes causing me to have inattention or have my mind wander and daydream. I got in trouble a lot at school when I was very young for that, because it wasn't that I wasn't trying to pay attention, but just by the nature of my condition, I'm not always the most focused person. And I might be thinking very deeply about something else, but I'm not in the room, essentially. I also do have the kind of hyperactivity in terms of having to do a lot of stuff. I don't really have a lot of downtime. I am impulsive in kind of making decisions sometimes, but then the autistic part of my brain is the opposite side to the impulsivity, in that I have to overthink like everything. There is some aspects of overthinking in ADHD, but I feel like in my brain anyway, the ADHD and the autism sort of battle with each other for, I want to do something exciting and spur of the moment, but actually I really need to do a load of research and think about this carefully and make the right decision. I feel like there's a lot of onus on me to sort that out. There are like a lot of people with ADHD talk about really struggling with executive dysfunction, which is a fancy term for it's very difficult to keep like a schedule throughout the day. It's difficult to kind of organize tasks in your head. So oftentimes you underplan the amount of time you need, and you have too many things jammed into a day. That definitely happens to me pretty regularly. I'm better at coping with it than I used to be, but it is a challenge in my personal life and at work. And I need to be very organized. And people say that I'm very organized, but that's really a coping mechanism. I try to be extremely organized about how I plan out my day, and I have to sit and think about whether I'm being realistic about the amount of time to get things done, for example. So it's probably I need more self-management on that than a typical person. In terms of emotional regulation, actually my meds have helped out a lot with that. I did used to get kind of much wider variations of feeling really grumpy and crap on a particular day versus being kind of upbeat and looking forward to things and hopeful. So I would say the medication has been really useful for me, and it is something that doesn't work for some people, and people also have a variety of different things they can try in that regard. But for me, it worked quite well. Finally, one of the comorbidities that isn't always talked about, specifically with ADHD, is dyslexia. That's very, very common to go together with ADHD and dyslexia. And potentially even more so if you also have autism. I have other things that equally kind of go together, sort of generally more so with autism, like dyspraxia, anxiety, depression. I don't have epilepsy, but that's also something that can kind of go along with those together along with ADHD and autism. So you can see already kind of in terms of mental health conditions, there is a lot potentially going on in someone's brain. If they have both autism and ADHD, that's probably just the you know, scratching the surface. You've got more going on there. With autism as well, like as you can see in the notes, the kind of differences might be more in the domain of like social communication and understanding challenges, like the ones that are obvious to other people. And this again is something that I kind of fight with two different parts of my brain, because I can be very gregarious and social and go out and want to do lots of things and meet people, but equally the autism part of my brain often feels very anxious about that, and sometimes gets those social signals wrong. So and I guess another aspect of the autism brain I haven't mentioned as much here is just, you know, having routines and doing things repetitively is very kind of soothing to me, but when things get disrupted, that can be a massive problem. I've just mentioned the gender fluidity here as well, because I myself am kind of gender fluid. I call myself non-binary, even though I was raised and I kind of present as a female person. My brain doesn't feel particularly one or the other in terms of gender and sex and kind of sex at birth. Like obviously I'm biologically female, but my brain doesn't really work that way. The other thing I just wanted to mention here as well is like a lot of relationships, whether they're very, very deep friendships, are sometimes in a brain like mine, sometimes almost akin to a romantic relationship. I have a very, very deep relationship with some of my my best friends, for example, and you know, I care very deeply about them, but I have fewer friends, so I'm less of a social butterfly, but more intense about relationships. I'll move on to the next slide because I just wanted to make a couple points on that slide. If we can go to the next one. I've highlighted here typically things that are or bolded items that are typically very common for people with both autism and ADHD. And there's a couple of additional items here, like fidgeting can be something that people with both conditions have and cope with in different ways. So you might want to think about, like, especially in a work environment, for example, allowing for kind of fidgeting in some way. People may have toys that they play with at their desks. With autism, they may have other approaches to what they call stimming. And again, that's the sort of stimulation of, some people might need to kind of rock back and forth in order to soothe themselves if they're having a lot of anxiety associated with their condition. So I highlight some of those things because really workplaces and, you know, environments where people are kind of out and about, you need to have like safe and quiet and good places to do those sorts of things. It's yet another reason why having kind of a safe and quiet zone in an office is really much better for a neurodiverse person. The only other point that I don't think I've made on this slide is oftentimes people who have both conditions, or at least in my experience, have trauma, especially as children. They may come from a traumatic household, but very often as well, people are also traumatized specifically because of their conditions, and they're made to feel guilty about them. They're made to feel like they were unruly children, for example, and that could be from like their parents, teachers, everyone around them as an adult. So often people bring with them into their adulthood that trauma and that shame and guilt. So that's also something to be aware of, and compassionate and supportive of people who have these conditions. May I go to the next slide, please? The other thing that we could probably spend a whole other session on is the physical comorbidities. Most of the things on this slide are things that I also have alongside with all the things I described going on in my brain. Physically, I have things like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a hypermobility condition, meaning you're more flexible than you should be. Might sound like a great thing, but actually it can lead to a lot of pain and injuries just doing simple things in life. My knees get disjointed a lot, and it's actually very painful and really hard to prevent in any way. So that's just a kind of an example. But as I said, I've got kind of most of the things on the slide, and you can see like throughout my whole body, I'm having to cope with all of those things a lot of the time, as well as the things that are going on in my brain. May I go to the next slide, please? I'll just round out with this and finish my time saying in terms of the kind of things that we can do to actually help people who have both conditions, these are probably things that you may have seen before looking at either condition, but certainly somebody who has both conditions really needs a lot of support in terms of, if in health and social services, for example, processing in the moment can be quite a challenge for people with both or either condition. So actually, it's really good to explain something to someone and then check for understanding, or give them like something they can take away with them and read, or have information they can think about afterwards. Sending SMS reminders of appointments is something that we've done in ADHD Aware, and it's actually quite a positive thing, and people find it very helpful. In the workplace, having quiet spaces, flexible working hours, because I also didn't mention that a lot of people, one physical outcome of kind of having these conditions is often that their circadian rhythm doesn't chime with a typical day-night sort of cycle. So having flexible working hours and being understanding about that can be very useful for people. And as I've talked about, kind of low sensory zones or relaxation rooms or private spaces could be very good for people to be able to do the things that they need to do to be productive. Finally, just wanted to highlight one of the things that probably employers don't think about a lot, or people who have folks coming into different meetings or involved in different activities. Public transport can be something that is really challenging for people, including in my experience, like all of the light and noise and sound and smells on a train are actually really stressful for me. So I have to wear headphones, or by the time I get home, I'm like really, really rattled and, and can't kind of calm down and have a nice evening. So just by putting in headphones and ignoring that, I feel better, but that can be a very distressing experience for people. And similarly for public spaces, making those kind of conducive to people with different needs is important. But I'm going to wrap up there. I know it's going to leave a little bit of time for Q&A, so I don't know if anyone has any questions. And that's my information, and you can read more about us and the charity at that link.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, we have 3 minutes before the break, so please do ask away. Got lots of thank yous. Yeah, that was amazing to hear how the two interplay. So thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, if you don't have any questions
Lots of
right away or
information.
nothing you want to ask kind of in front of people, feel free to email me as well. And we've got, various resources we can point you to, or I'm happy to help in any way.
Perfect. I think Emily has a question. Would you like to ask yours, Emily? Thank you.
It's just a really quick question. I guess you spoke a lot about the physical things. And I've got dual diagnoses as well. I've got lots of physical health. I wonder, how do you, with your autism, I'm really intrigued, like, how do you recognize your pain? Like, is there ways that you can communicate that? Because that's something I struggle with. It's something that the people I work with struggle with. And I just wondered how you get that across to people. I'm just really intrigued, like how you know your pain and how you, does that make sense? I know the question.
Yeah, it does. And totally, some of the things you mentioned in your presentation about being able to communicate your needs, like emotionally and physically, I really struggle sometimes to even recognize in myself that something is going on. So especially emotionally, I don't know that something's going on until I feel ready to kind of blow up about something. So, in terms of kind of coping with stuff, I have, and in terms of physical things like pain, I have started to try and be just kind of more mindful and more conscious of what's going on with my body, and do sort of check-ins with myself. I know areas of my body where I often get pain, that if I don't specifically consciously think about it, I'm able to just ignore it, but actually I'm really feeling quite unwell, and it kind of runs me down. So I do some time at the gym, I do walking, and like being physically fit has definitely helped some of the problems that I have. But that also gives me like touch points of actually being aware of some of the things physically going on in my body on a regular basis. So I'm able to sort of tune into it when I'm doing things that are kind of physically focused. I don't have a lot of other coping strategies other than that, because I do have pain problems that I have to kind of treat medically, and I don't love that. I wish I had more kind of personal empowerment around pain, but I think doing activities that remind me of my body and what's going on in my body helps most. So hopefully that's helpful.
That is really helpful. Thank you.
See another hand up. I don't know if we have time for.
Thank you. We actually need to go to a break now, Ashley, and I'm very sorry. Do you mind putting your question in the chat, and I can get Katie to answer it afterwards, and we can send it round to you?
Yeah.
It's okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Just need to be really strict with time because we've got so much to get through. So thank you. So I'm going to have a comfort break just for 5 minutes. Go and grab a cup of tea, go to the toilet, whatever you need to do. And we'll see you back here at 10:45. Thank you. Hello everyone, hope you enjoyed your very quick break. We're going to do a lived experience panel now. So I'm going to introduce Alice and Fiona, and you've already met Tanya and Emily. So Alice is a peer tutor at Southdown Recovery College and teaches the Autism and Employment course, amongst other things. She has a lot of busy roles. And Fiona is going to be hosting the panel. And Fiona comes to us with a wealth of experience, having worked for not-for-profits for the last 8 years and over 20 years working in senior management roles in the public sector. You do not look old enough, Fiona. I don't know how you've done that. Fiona identifies as neurodivergent and is a member of the LGBTQ+ community. So I welcome them all to the screen.
Thank you, Brooke. I was hoping that we would all appear on the screen together. I've just got 2 on mine at the moment, but I'll continue. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm just going to go through a few pre-prepared questions that the panel have already had sight of, which is quite a common adjustment for neurodiversity, is to have information in advance. As someone did say earlier, it's surprises don't work well with processing if you're neurodivergent. So the first question, I'm going to start off with Alice. The question is, how did discovering that you were autistic change your life or impact your understanding of yourself?
So it massively changed my life. I wasn't diagnosed as autistic until I was 19. So I spent like all of my childhood knowing that there was something different about me and maybe that there was something wrong with me. I really struggled to make friends. I struggled with like the social aspects of being at school. I used to get in trouble a lot and not understand why. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed that I realized that there wasn't something wrong with me, and that there were in fact other people like me out there. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that helped, was realizing that it wasn't just me who felt like that. So being diagnosed let me better understand why I found the things difficult, that why I found things difficult. And because I understood why I found things difficult, I was able to like access better support, but also make my own reasonable adjustments and think of ways to make things easier for me. But it also let me know that I wasn't the only person who found things difficult, and I was able to, I joined lots of like social groups for autistic people, and I met lots of other autistic people. I'd never met an autistic person until I was diagnosed. And it was like amazing to realize there were other people out there like me, and it had a massively positive effect on my life being diagnosed.
Thank you, Alice. I'm going to move on to Emily. Would you like me to repeat the question again? Were you okay there?
Could you just repeat it again? Sorry, my brain
Yes.
was just a little bit.
How did discovering you were autistic change your life or impact your understanding of yourself?
I think for changing my life, it was I'd been misdiagnosed in my CAMS treatment. So when I was under cancer, eating disorders and mental health, I got misdiagnosed with autism. They just suspected it, didn't do anything with it. And then I had to go through quite a traumatic 5 years of life, really struggling, and just lots of things out of character. And in the end, when I had to go private for my diagnosis, and I got the diagnosis within 2 weeks, and it completely changed who I was. The world started to make sense. Like I didn't know I'd belonged in the world, and lots of abnormal things were happening in my life that people didn't see in me, and it was because of the autism. It wasn't because I'd done anything wrong or was a really bad person. It was because I was autistic. And I think once that diagnosis, I don't like diagnosis because it doesn't define you, but it can change lives, and it saved me. And I think it's just given me a whole new outlook of life, and made me belong in a world where I didn't think I belonged, and opened up so many doors that never would have opened up without this diagnosis. And people just see me so differently now, and I think that's been really important. And it just it's empowered me as a person, and it engages me in the world that I didn't think I belonged in, and I can belong in that world now because I'm with my autism in my own way.
Thank you, Emily. And we now move on to Tanya. Same question again. If you'd like me to repeat it, I can.
No, it's okay. Thank you. And thank you for changing it to autistic people. That's good. Yeah, so I was originally diagnosed in 1967, which I appreciate is a very long time ago. And I was promptly undiagnosed because I was a girl. And girls in 1967 could not be autistic. So even though the pediatrician very accurately describes an autistic young child, it was then said I wasn't. They called it something else, which is an untranslatable term that is actually doesn't even exist. They just made up a word to describe what was wrong with me. And that is the picture that occurred then through the next 50 years, 50 years, I had to wait to actually finally get re-diagnosed again. And it was even to the month, 50 years later, I was actually recognized as being autistic following an 8-year fight with GPs to get referred because they refused. And all through that 50 years, I was blaming myself. Others were blaming me, that I was mad, I was bad. And I thought that I'm sure I'm not mad. I'm sure I'm not bad. I'm just very different. And I didn't know why. And getting that diagnosis, my first reaction was absolute anger. I was so angry, thinking when I had put it all together, there was the original diagnosis, then that was ignored, and then blaming me for 50 years. It was so unfair, particularly being autistic. Fairness is a big part of my life, and unfairness. And then I set out on a mission to educate people about it, which is what I'm still doing, including today. I'm teaching a youth offending service all day because it's really, really important that people understand autism and the impact it has. So it was life-changing, both diagnoses, because one made my life a mystery, the other one allowed me to be kind to myself, to forgive myself, and to say, well, look back on your life through a different lens, the lens of neurodiversity. And all of a sudden, everything made sense, and that was powerful. And that experience I still share with clients today, with my coaching clients. When they're newly diagnosed, I always say, let's look back at your life, but now knowing that you've got ADHD, you are autistic, how does it change things? And it is really powerful and empowering for people to be kind to themselves and to say, you know what, I didn't do anything wrong. I was just me. The world just wasn't designed for me. That's all that was going on. So that was my experience.
Thank you very much. From my perspective, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 16, and it didn't quite fit everything that was going on for me. So my autism, I had a diagnosis 2 years ago, and ADHD last year. So for me, it fills in the gap of what I didn't understand when I was back at 16, and it makes me understand why I find change difficult, why I find sensitivity, particularly to sound, difficult, and it helps me to be understood better by others, and I'm starting to understand myself as well. So now I'll move on to the next question, which will be to start with Tanya. What's the best type of support you've received as an autistic person, or what support do you wish was available?
Two different things. I think the best support is people not judging and actually believing me when I say something. When I say I need to be alone now, that means I need to be alone now. Not like, oh, you should be, you should be socializing, you should be doing this. Actually trusting yourself, I think, is and encouraging a person to trust their own feelings is probably the best thing you can do. And being open and prepared to clarify things, to think about how clear is your communication, because it's very easy to get that wrong and for it to be misinterpreted or literally interpreted. How good are people at communicating? And the answer is pretty crap, actually.
I'll move on to Emily now. The question is, what's the best type of support you've received as an autistic person, or what support do you wish you was available?
guess it's a bit of both. So the best type of support, is understanding my needs as much as possible. So before my diagnosis, I was expected to fit in all these little text boxes and boxes, and I had to fit in. And if I didn't fit in, I couldn't have support, I couldn't be understood. So actually, I think, when the environment that I work, I work to adapt environments, I work to adapt treatment, and I work to adapt support. When actually people adapted the support, creatively with me to engage with, I'm a creative person. I can verbalize sometimes now, but some days I can't. And someone just sitting and drawing with me and just letting me be my real self and not judging me has been a really big thing. Just someone saying, how can I help you? Or what do you need from me? Not saying, oh, you must do this, you must do it that way. So I think that's been a really big thing. And I think it's making, so much now, so many services like NHS, mental health services, they make you fit into boxes to be supported. And if you don't fit into that box, you're discharged. But it's being adaptable with what you've got and just working with that as much as possible, because actually, you can be supported if it's given in the right way. And I think it's just empowering, and it's the empathy, and it's the non-judgment, and it's learning. So professionals, that I work with now, I've actually, when I deliver training to them, they go, well, how can we learn from you? And then they take that on board and they put it into practice when they work with me and support me. And that's really empowered my journey and then grown me as a person. And it's just the listening and the no judgment and allowing me to be my real authentic self.
Thank you, Emily. Now over to Alice, the same question.
Yeah, echoing what Emily and Tanya said, the thing that is the most important is listening to me. And treating me like a person, which should go without saying, but sometimes it doesn't. All autistic people are different, so the kind of support that is helpful to each of us will be different. The thing that is the most helpful for me is people taking the time to get to know me and to understand the things that I find difficult, and also to understand that when I find things difficult, I'm not doing it on purpose, and that sometimes I need a bit more support, or I might need a bit more, like a bit longer to do something than a neurotypical person would. And it's not that I'm bad at my job or that I'm not very clever, it's just that my brain sometimes works a bit slower or works in a different way. So that's the most helpful. But I've had a lot of different practical support that's been really helpful over the years as well. A long time ago now, I used to be a support worker, and something that I really struggle with as an autistic person is getting public transport for lots of different reasons. The buses don't run on a schedule, and it's loud and smelly, and I get very stressed out by it, and I can't read bus timetables. So I got taxis to work funded through Access to Work, and that made such a massive difference. And it's one of those things that you wouldn't think, you're just oh, it's just another way to get to work. It's it can't make that much of a difference, really, can it? But if I hadn't had that as a reasonable adjustment, I just straight up wouldn't have been able to do my job, because I would be getting the bus and I would be so overwhelmed when I was getting the bus to work that by the time I got into work, I would be just an absolute mess and I wouldn't be able to function. So sometimes having those adjustments that might seem a bit silly or over the top, or it seems a bit why would somebody need that? They actually do make a really, really big difference. Other stuff that I find really helpful is being able to wear things like noise cancelling headphones or ear defenders in an office. And yeah, having extra supervisions with my line manager, or being able to have longer meetings with people, because I get quite stressed out if somebody gives me a lot of information at once really quickly. I find it really, really hard to take all of that in. So being able to have maybe shorter meetings, but more of them, so it's not a lot of information all at once, or to have a longer meeting so the stuff can be spaced out and not just fired at you, that is also really, really helpful for me. Also having things summarized in emails, because yeah, I tend to struggle with being given a lot of information verbally and not remembering it.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you for mentioning Access to Work, because that's what I was going to say as well. That's been a big help for me. Yeah, the other things is, it's going to be a plug for the Recovery College here. We run autistic courses or courses about awareness in autism, and that really helped me following my diagnosis, and also a course I went on with a cert. So move on to the final question. What are the things that a non-autistic person can do to communicate with or better understand yourselves? And that will go to Emily.
Sorry, can you just repeat the question again?
Yeah,
Please?
what are some things a non-autistic person can do to communicate with or better understand autistic people?
I guess for me, like to communicate with me, I think it goes to my communication passport. I wear the sunflower lanyard wherever I go. I've got a copy of my communication passport. I've got a plan of it, engagement plan, and actually, I can verbalize sometimes, but actually people just looking at the passport with me and then we talk about it. And that's really, really important because yes, I can verbalize, but sometimes if I'm having a really rubbish day politely, I can't communicate. So actually just using communication cards, communication boards, using those creative ways is really, really important. And I think, something to understand an autistic person. So something that's really, we talk about mentoring. So something that I do in my work and my training is actually we build mentoring relationships. So like we mentor, so people that are autistic join up with someone that isn't autistic, and they build these relationships and they build how they can understand each other, through special interests, through different activities. And we get to go into like each other's worlds and just someone coming into my world, they might not understand it straight away and that's okay. But coming into my world, just walking alongside me is so, so important, and just learning a bit about me. And by doing that, you get to learn those differences and those diversities, and they empower me. And just, embracing who we are. Because yes, we've got this diagnosis of autism, but we're not an alien to the world, and we're still a human being, and we still deserve to be cared about. So I think, being given the same opportunities. People think because I'm autistic, I can't do anything, and I can't do all these like normal living opportunities. I can, if I'm prepared for it, supported with it, and have support before, during, and after, and it's planned. And that's just the best thing that people can do, and that's just really important.
Thank you, Emily. We now move on. Same question to Tanya.
Yeah, like Emily already said, I use the sunflower lanyard as well, particularly when I'm traveling on airplanes. It's really, really helpful, though abroad they do not understand it at all, but that's another story. I find in terms of communicating, it's really important that you are happy to give clarification, but that you offer clarification. So I will often say to my autistic clients, would you like me to put that in a different way? I don't say, do you understand? Because that make them feel like, oh, well, I'm stupid, I don't understand. Would you like me to explain that in a different way? If you want me to draw it, look, I've drawn one up here. This is what it looks like. And actually that allows them to say, oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, now I get it. So what I'm trying to do always is reduce the barrier for communication and trying to reduce anxiety in communication. By doing that, actually you allow somebody to participate and keep language really not simple, but straightforward. Sometimes people use very difficult words for things that actually, for example, to use the word monotropism is quite often used, which nobody's ever heard of unless they're from an autistic background. But actually what it really means is hyperfocus, and that people do not like to get out of that hyperfocus. That is something people can understand. So it's thinking about also making things predictable and familiar, because that makes it easy to know what's going to happen next. And familiarity will actually increase confidence and makes it easier for people to do things. I don't like going to places I don't know, but if somebody is with me and comes with me a few times, I will then be confident to go and do it by myself. But if there's another change in that routine, I have to start again. And it is the difference is if somebody says, oh yeah, that's fine, I can walk with you there, that's no problem, or offers it. And that makes me feel actually really respected and acknowledged in what I'm experiencing. I want to say thank you very much, and I have to go because, like I say, I'm teaching a class and the break is over, so I have to go and talk to them again. Thank you very much for being all here today. Bye.
No, thank you very much. Same question to Alice. It'll have to be brief because we're running out of time now.
I will be very quick. Yes, similar to what everyone has said, but yeah, for me, it's really important that people use clear, concise, and non-ambiguous language. I get really, really anxious when people say things and it's not quite clear what they mean. So things like, oh, we can talk about this later. Stuff like that makes me feel really anxious because I don't know when later is. It's not a very clear thing. So making sure that you are like clear with the language that you use, and also that you do say what you mean, which again sounds really obvious, but a lot of the time people don't say what they mean, and that is really stressful. It's really difficult, but also I'm not very good at picking up on things like that. So I'm not very good at picking up on sarcasm. I'm not very good at understanding when a question is rhetorical or not. So kind of just being like clear and using your words to say what you mean. I'm also not very good at body language, reading body language and reading tone. So I'm not going to pick up on like the subtext. If you're annoyed at me, you need to tell me verbally that you're annoyed at me in like a simple sentence, because if you're trying to convey that information through your tone of voice or the way that you're looking at me, I'm just not going to pick up on that, and then we're not going to be able to solve our conflict or whatever. So sort of, yeah, those things are very important to me. Also, yeah, like I said, not giving me lots and lots of information about lots of different things at once. Keeping it quite simple in if we're going to have one conversation about one thing, that's that conversation about that thing. If we need to go over lots and lots of different things, maybe having a break in between them. Or also I prefer to have things summarized in writing. Yeah, that was my very quick answer.
Great, thank you very much, Alice. I think you guys have covered everything, so nothing else for me to add, and I'll hand you back to Brooke. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Gosh, that's so much to take in. There's so much information there. All brilliant, and just great to hear your lived experiences, and I'm sure we've all learnt a lot, so thank you. Now we're going to move on to hear from Christopher. So Christopher's presentation is very visual. He is an incredible artist. And I'll just do his introduction, and this really did make me laugh out loud. I really love this. So Christopher Hoggins was born in London in the 1970s and is still alive at the time of publication, despite numerous attempts by the British government to rectify this matter. He lives by the seaside, but without a view, and inhabits a flat with far too many books and toys. At the age of 50, he discovered that he was autistic and finally had an explanation of his ability to offend almost everyone with very little effort. He spends most of his days coming up with ideas that will annoy people and lose him money. So I'll now hand over to Christopher.
Hello there. Right, please be gentle with me, and if it start meandering, somebody just nudge me or something. I found out that I was autistic at 50 after basically a lifetime of just struggling with my mental health. I'd have every sort of therapy going, every kind of medication going, and nothing made a dent. It was on one of these attempts to try and get escalated to the second tier mental health services that someone actually mentioned that I might be autistic. Turns out it had actually been on my notes for 2 years and no one had got around to tell me. And once I did, and I started looking through all the usual books and ticking every single symptom going, I realised that, you know, loads of strange things going back in my past made an awful lot of sense. And being an artist and being someone who kind of records everything, I did what I do with everything else, which is just paint everything that I remembered. Next picture, please. One of the things I've always struggled with people, I spent about 10 years as, I suppose recluse is the kindest word. You know, I think when some people look at films like I Am Legend or whatever, or 28 Days Later, they see like kind of horror stories, whereas I kind of look at it in the same way as people look at you know, like holiday programs or something. I like the idea of just being in the middle of nowhere. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in the middle of a town. Work that one out. Next one. Well, one of my very first memories is someone very foolishly throwing me a birthday party, and I promptly ran away and hid. I mean, I was, you know, quite small, and I didn't really have the language or the ability to express quite why things were how they were, but I knew that my reaction was not the one you're supposed to have, which is, you know, not a massive tantrum. So what I asked for my next birthday present was not to have any more parties ever. Thank you very much. So, and that is something that I've stuck with ever since. Next. Ah, um, I spent much of my childhood just kind of buried in Lego. Um, just the love of building it, just like, you know, lining up all the bricks in order. I really loved that kind of ASMR quality. I can never remember the full thing for that, but I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about. And I've never really stopped. I mean, I still get Lego now. I've still got it all dotted around the place. I guess it's probably one of my first examples of an autistic special interest. Next one. Right. This is kind of a strange one. I mean, I've found from a lot of other autistic people that I've met since um, that there's this kind of being drawn to subcultures, mainly because you have a set of rules. You can kind of, how do you put it? You you know, if you dress as a goth, you have this sort of hair, you have this sort of music, you can get fixated on this band, you can learn all that kind of thing. And I don't think it matters what the subculture is, but you often find, you know, people in fandoms or people who love bands, you get the real hardcore ones, and yeah, there does tend to be a lot of neurodiversity there. So I you know, I found out a lot of my friends at that time as well turned out to be autistic as well. So that was a surprise. Um, Next one, please. Oh, I've been dreading this. This is kind of around the time that I had my first, it would have been described then as a nervous breakdown. It was about 1998, and I I went back after a few years at university, and the little office I'd been working in when I was young had been shut down, and it had all been turned into what was effectively one of the first call centres. And it was a perfect storm for an autistic person, I guess, looking at it back, to have a complete meltdown stroke shutdown in. Um, it was in Islington. I had to get the tube there. It was big open plan offices. It was hot desking. And if you wanted an environment to make your brain pop, that was it, and it did. Um, yes. um, Next. Now this is one of those kind of things where you get, it's that, I suppose you'd call it the spectrum thing, isn't it? You can be either massively on one side of it or the other, even though the spectrum is now basically kind of like a colour wheel, isn't it? So, but I'm one of those people who absolutely adores bright colours. Whereas I know that I've met as many autistic people who just like everything muted around them. But I love silence. I can't bear to be around any noise of any sort. So I've kind of got it high up on one side in the terms of the visual colour thing, but incredibly low down on the sound thing. I guess that's probably the best way of explaining it. I think we covered that one. Next one, please. Yes. I've had exactly the same lunch, pretty much, for my entire life. And there's been a few situations where, just basically for being as alive as long as I have, things have been, what's the word, discontinued. And it feels like my life kind of has ground to a halt. I just pray there's never a day where my mic gets removed, because I honestly would probably starve to death. Next one, please. Oh God, yes. I've always had to deal with anxiety before I even knew what it was. It's just trying to find a way of putting that into some kind of context that makes sense. I mean, like a lot of people who go through life without diagnoses or with the wrong one for a long time, you end up self-medicating just to dull down the worst of it. I still get a lot of anxiety now. It's something that every time I leave the house, which is probably less than is healthy, it's basically like throwing a dice. And it doesn't take much to kind of knock me off my perch. I've got better at dealing with it, but it's still there. It's and it's just kind of something that I have to manage. Next one, please. Oh, I think we've gone slightly in the wrong order, but yes. Now this is kind of a little bit of a controversial one, because I think there's always this thing where we have to acknowledge that there's always been people with autism. And if we look at, the amount of people in the creative sectors, the amount of people in the sciences, and in every, like kind of every sector who kind of can add that experience into the world, it's impossible to deny that, the world would be a very sad place if it wasn't for neurodiverse people. And, there's the ones who are alive now who have been diagnosed, who, we can acknowledge have got it. And there's the ones who, if you talk to various psychiatrists or various writers, were it was pretty safe that they did, and I just think it's just important to acknowledge that, you know, particularly with a certain organisation in America that tried to find a cure for autism, it's actually something that should never go away, and it should be embraced, and it's a really important part of the world, and it's something to be celebrated and embraced. Next one, please.
I think that's all of them, actually.
Oh, we're missing one. We're missing the logical thinking one, which threw me. Any questions, anyone, or anything, or a little bit early?
Yeah, we do have time for questions if anyone has any. And I've also got a link to Christopher's book that I'll put in the chat. So please do have a look. Taya, you have your hand up first.
Hello, thank you for your drawings. They're very inspiring and hold a lot of energy in them. But I was wondering, like, watching when you're going through slides that are slightly sadder and your reaction is, you kind of react, like, how do you feel as a process drawing it when the subject is quite difficult for you? Is it distressing or more relaxing at the end of it?
There's a lot darker in the book, but it is quite triggering still, because there is a bittersweet thing of finding out you have autism at 50, because there is plenty that I've missed out on in life. I mean, there's always that thing with causality. You might have got everything that you quote unquote wanted, and then you might have got run over by a bus. So it's always important to remember that your imagined life and what you ended up with is, you know, terms and conditions may apply. But the reason I did this book was I wanted it to be there for other people. I mean, obviously, everyone's experiences are very much their own experiences, but there are commonalities, and while it's far from a diagnostic manual of any kind of sort, there are things that might ring a bell in others, and you know, and there have been quite a few people who've seen it who have gone to seek their own diagnosis since. And I don't know. I think any experience you've had, even a painful one, if you can learn from it, or if someone else can learn from it, it's never been a waste. It's all learning. It's all adding to the world. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that, as Forrest Gump would say.
Thanks.
Thank you for your question. Gemma, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, because it's been so inspiring for me, because my son has autism, and one of the things that I really struggle with as a mum is trying to obviously want him to feel so comfortable at home and in his own environment and not have to change who he is, but also trying, when you spoke about the food and about always eating the same food, and I suppose that for me, from a mum perspective, has always been a worry. And I suppose, you know, to see you thriving at 50, and you know that, you know, understanding a bit more how anxiety provoking that is, because it is for him too. And I think I'll definitely be purchasing your book, because I think he would love your diagram. He's coming up 15.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Some of it's a little bit yes, adult content.
He'll probably love it even more. But I just think it,
Yes.
you know, it's really maybe looking at your photos and the emotions, I found it really emotional. So it really touched me. So thanks ever so much.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you so much, Christopher. That was absolutely fantastic. And I put the link to the book in the chat so you can see the whole thing. Yeah, please do have a look. So thank you for your time.
I can lie down in a dark room now.
You can. You're allowed. Go and have some Marmite sandwiches.
Guilty.
Thank you. I'm going to pass over to Alice now. She's going to do our last section, and that's how to be an ally beyond Autism Awareness Day. So I'll pass over to Alice. Thank you.
Thank you. So you spent all morning listening to all of us talk and share our experiences, and now I would like to ask you all to think about what you can take away. What have you learned today, and what are you going to do to take away with the information that you've learned today? How are you going to be an ally beyond Autism Awareness Day? So what are you going to change in the way that you interact with and support autistic people going forward? So you can either type it in the chat and I will read it out loud, or you can put your hand up if you would prefer. Ooh, Brooke says, I am going to be clearer in my communication and make sure I give enough time for responses. Amazing, perfect, I love it. Wonderful thing to take away. Gemma says, be more aware of my language. Perfect. Chrissy says, give plenty of time for people to process and respond. Let's go to one of the people with their hands up. I'm not so good at seeing who's got their hands up on the screen. Chris Wellings, do you want to show what you're going to do?
Hello, thank you. Yeah, a very inspiring morning, and really pleased to be here. I think for me, one of the things I want to try and explore, I work in HR for Southdown, is about the medical passports. I really think that is something we can look at Southdown, in order that people with different experiences, different disabilities can communicate in different ways and not having to keep repeating themselves.
Yes,
so I'm going to look at that.
Yeah, communication passports are really helpful. And they're something that was traditionally very much just used for people with learning disabilities, but they are becoming more commonly used for autistic people. So yeah, I really recommend them. The National Autistic Society website also has hospital passports that have communication sections in them that are quite helpful, like preset ones. Someone else with their hand up, Emily.
Can you hear me? Sorry, my Teams is doing something very weird.
Yes,
I think as well, I think kind of from what we've spoken about, I think it's that education and learning, because I think with me, obviously we've got autism, but there's so much diversity to autism that I've learned from today, from all the different presentations, and it's like, how can I learn more? It's about, because we've got the communication passports, we've got the sensory passports, we've got all of these things, but we all use them so differently. And I think we almost need a day where we all just sit with each other and learn in our own way and have like a networking, and just, I think for me, because I work in autism and eating disorders and mental health as a lived experience, it's doing more of that when I deliver training. It's sitting with those other lived experience people and learning from professionals and just learning what their strengths and weaknesses are and building on that, and not seeing them as bad things, but seeing them as opportunities for growth and just being empowered.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing. That's, yeah, absolutely wonderful. I completely agree. We should all be lifting each other up. And yeah, I guess that's the one thing that I hope everyone takes away from today, is that we've shared our experiences, but every single autistic person is different. So even though like there are a lot of shared experiences, lots of us experience the same things, that doesn't mean that we're like one large monolith and that we all have the same support needs, or we all have the same likes and dislikes. We're all individual people. So yeah, getting to know us as people and what will support us individually best is the most important thing. Ask how you can support us, listen to what we say, and then act on what we've told you will help us. I think we've got 1 minute left. So, we've got someone else with their hand up. Wendy Robinson, and I think you're the last person because we're running out of time.
I'll be quick. Hello, thank you for this morning. It's been very refreshing, actually, in terms of a training and workshop. I was thinking about the environment, how important the environment is, and how people get to that environment or agreed environment that suits both. Also, as you guys were presenting, I also contacted our feedback satisfaction department to request that we relook at our satisfaction forms and whether they're too busy or whether we can use some of the information that Emily had put forward. So I'm going to have a look at that with also with our expert by experience as well, and just see if we can do something slightly different that might be representative of everyone. And the final thing was around, I've realised that sometimes people come with a hope that I'm an expertise in being fully aware of all the different types of experiences people have, and I think I just have to be more upfront about tell me how this could work, kind of thing, with each person. And I think so there's lots of thoughts that are running through, but thank you very much.
Oh, I love that. So many different things, and they're all wonderful things. Yeah, amazing. Thank you very much for sharing. I can see that there's lots of really amazing ones in the comments as well, but I think we have run out of time, but I have read everyone's comments as well. I've been reading them, and they all look amazing. So thank you everyone for sharing, and thank you for listening to us today. It's been lovely to talk to you all.
Thank you, Alice. That's fantastic. We've got so much to take away. And there's also some resources that we've added to a web page. If you scan your phone over this QR code and click on the link, you should be able to access those. We'll also send the link round in an email to you all. And we're going to collect everything from the chat and put it all together so that everything is recorded and we have it all in one place. But thank you so much for joining, everyone. We're really, really pleased that you could all make it. And thank you so much to our speakers again and to everyone involved. And have a lovely day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.